Good afternoon or good evening, everyone, wherever you are. Thank you so much for being here with us today. It's my honor to welcome you to the Mentorship Programme for East African Curators Symposium, which is a culmination of 6 months of deep engagement, critical reflection, and collective growth across borders, mediums, and practices. This program was born out of a shared desire to support and nurture a new generation of women curators from East Africa who are not only shaping exhibitions but also challenging dominant narratives, building community, and curating with care, responsibility, and vision. Over the past 6 months, 6 brilliant mentees from Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania have participated in a series of monthly conversations, one-on-one mentorship sessions, and an in-person convening in Kampala. They've explored access to culture and questioned what it means to curate in and for this region in their own terms. This journey would not have been possible without the commitment and collaboration of 3 incredible organizations. Of course, I begin with ourselves, the Njabala Foundation, which is based in Uganda and committed to promoting visibility for women artists through exhibitions, research, mentorship, and community engagement. And Aware, Archives of Women Artists Research and Exhibitions, which is an NGO created in 2014 that works towards making women artists in the 17th and 21st centuries visible by producing and sharing free trilingual French, English, Japanese content about their work on its website. This online resource presently contains more than 1,300 biographic texts and draws up to 80,000 visits per month, which is 60% from Europe. Aware represents a diversity of voices with written in by around 500 researchers, feminists, and art historians, art critics, activists from all over the world. To widely disseminate research on women artists, Aware also organizes symposia, roundtables, and seminars in collaboration with institutions, universities, museums, and other NGOs in France all over the world, and edits its own content public. Um, and finally, the Independent Creators International, ICI, which is a New York-based nonprofit organization advancing curatorial practice globally. ICI supports curators to help create stronger art communities through experimentation, collaboration, and international engagement, envisioning curators as arts community leaders who champion artistic practice, building social infrastructures and institutions, and generate public engagement with art. Since 1975, they have worked with art spaces in the United States and around the world to present exhibitions, public programs for broad audiences, as well as professional development initiatives for curators. Together, all these organizations have offered not just institutional support, but shared cultural attitudes and aspirations that value listening, feminist pedagogy, and co-creation. We also want to thank organizations that have not just given us support, but also have given us funding for this particular project. Here, I would like to appreciate the Access Culture Project, the RFD, the Institut Français for the generous support funding this mentorship program. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you our speakers, the 6 curators who have been inspired by the different mentors through the program, and I'll be reading bio by bio as I invite them to speak. So the first speaker is Turakela Editha Nindo. May I request you, Nelly, to share her presentation?
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes. Is that the first page?
No. Let me put the first page. Okay. Yeah, this is the first page.
Tura, are you around?
Yes, I'm right here.
Okay. So I'm just gonna quickly introduce you. So Turakela Editha Nyindo is an art curator and multidisciplinary artist based in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Inspired by human nature and its adaptations to a rapidly changing world, she challenges collective preconceptions around intersectionality, identity, and belonging. Tura envisions a human being whose identity transcends rigid social associations and whose place in society is shaped not only by personal experiences but also by a connection to existence that extends beyond physical embodiment. After completing her university education, Tura joined the Nafasi Art Space Academy for curatorial practice and art management program in 2021. Since then, she has curated several exhibitions and art projects in Tanzania, including solo exhibitions at Alliance Francaise, residency programs at Mazi Arts Culture, and workshop programs at the Goethe Institute in Dar es Salaam. Please welcome Tura.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the very nice introduction. So again, my name is Tura from Tanzania, and through this mentorship program, I was working with the mentor, Georgina Maxim, who is from Zimbabwe. Well, my work for a long time has been about understanding the human nature, where I started practicing as a way of understanding myself and the kind of understanding people has towards me. What are the elements that shapes that understanding, and who has the power on creating these elements? And me as a curator and also an artist, how can I claim that power and redefine the perspective that has been shaped by, like a certain group in my community, in my case, shaped by colonialism and patriarchy system. So most of my work have been about experimenting and exploration of materials in my community, but as well as the women, as I am a woman myself. So me trying to understand myself means also understanding that. What does that mean to be a woman in my community? In this program, the mentorship program, I began with the interest in women and public spaces, specifically around myth and taboos that shapes women in different ways to interact in public spaces. And I had conversation with my mentor Georgina on the research of that, and also I reflected as a person as well. And after some time, that shifted. My focus shifted from the myth and taboos, but went to a general perspective of spaces, because if we're talking about women or people in public spaces, I thought I needed to understand space. So I began to look at space as an artistic medium, but also as a body of archive for inquiries that I'm trying to research on. So I began to think about Jumba Bovu exhibitions, which is a series of public interventions in Dar es Salaam and across. And basically in Kiswahili, Jumba Bovu is a Swahili word, which means broken houses or abandoned spaces. And in my case, I'm looking at these abandoned spaces, not necessarily physical spaces, but also public spaces that either are not used or are overlooked, and how can we use these spaces to, to bring conversations around women, but also to get different perspective from different people in the community. So I began to explore the public spaces in Dar es Salaam through the project Jumba Bovu exhibitions. And in last month, we started I started to invite other artists as well, because the idea is also to have like a collaborative kind of intervention, but also to create communities in Dar es Salaam. So we did the first event, or the first intervention in Dar es Salaam, which called Testimonial from the Body, which again we were looking at women and the colonial cleansing practices, body cleansing practices of women. So in this first edition, I invited an artist called Vanessa, who's a performance artist, and we had participatory practices around the community in Tandale in Dar es Salaam. So, and also on top of that, we had another edition, or another chapter, which was around the beach at the Coco Beach, which again was also one of the ways to create a community, but also for me as a curator, one of the way to understand this the space, and how can one an artist or a creator use these spaces for meaningful conversation, but also how to how to use the space without provoking the community. This is one of the conversation that I had again when I first talked to Georgina about my interest in working in public spaces. She asked me a question: how do I want to do anything in public spaces without provoking the public? So it's a question that I've been thinking about, and now through this event, I still something that I'm trying to build on how to create spaces for care, how to not not add on not take from the community or the space, but mainly add on to the spaces. So that was these are the two editions that we have done in for the Jumba Bovu exhibitions. And yes, so in terms of the project description, it's an ongoing with different artists in Tanzania, but also in other parts of the world. So with our the methodologies that we are going to look at is mainly experimentation and participatory activities and interventions, and looking again on the original, or my initial interest in women and public spaces. So many of the interventions that are going to happen are going to focus around women in public spaces. And also the invitations that we are going to have for the collaborations are mainly going to focus on women in Tanzania and in Africa at large. And for the expectations that I have for this project, I I have no idea like what to expect, or like how to envision the end of this project, because I am building this project with not only just me, but now I've been inviting different people to tap into that and make something like a collective intervention. So it's an ongoing research which is going to be based on experimentation and public intervention. So I'm excited to see where it's going to unfold. And at the moment, after doing these two public interventions, I am going back to do more research in terms of, like, specifically in terms of spaces, more reading around that, and hopefully by the end of the year or next year we'll continue with the event and the public interventions here in Dar es Salaam and maybe in other places as well. Thank you, and that is what I've been working 6 months.
Thank you so much, Tura. If people have questions, please reserve them to the end of this talk, where I shall be inviting questions in the last 20 minutes. So just write them down either in the chat or somewhere so you can ask Tura. Thank you so much for that. The next speaker is Maria Olivia Nakato. Maria, are you there?
Hello, Martha. How have you been?
Good, good. So I request Nelly to screen your presentation as I read your bio.
Yeah.
All right. So Maria Olivia Nakato is an emerging curator based in Kampala with Mumba Collective. She holds space for emerging artists to commune, collaborate, and create. Her interdisciplinary approach integrates documentation of cultural narratives, collaborations, and experimentation to foster creative dialogue. Nakato has curated Lydia Mugambi's retrospective, Imparted Impressions 2024, under the Emerging Curators Program by Exanson Art Space with mentorship from Balimunsi Philip, and prototyped a spinning sculpture, Hibiscus, for her continuing project researching herbal medicines for Kampala Art Festival 2024 by 32 Degrees East. She has also curated exhibitions such as Vyabakazi Group Exhibition at Umoja Art Gallery in Kampala, and was a curatorial assistant for the In the Midst at the Capsule Gallery, Kampala, in the Transit Under Another Sky at Afroposting Studio Lab in Kampala. Please welcome Nakato.
Hello. For everyone who's listening, as Martha said, Nakato Maria Olivia, and my project is basing on the of translating film. So one of the VJ is Jingo, and he's quite popular for saying "Hatambika DC," and you would hear this outside, sort of to let people know that the movie is just beginning. So, and this was such a common thing in my household, and when I was thinking of a title for the project, I was like, oh, it's just beginning, because somehow I feel like I'm just also beginning, so the title fits maybe the stage I'm at right now. And this project was inspired also, by the action of translating films. And I noticed with my younger siblings, they were not watching translated films, later even buying CDs like we used to in the 2000s and early 2010s. So I was like, before this culture is erased, let me do my best. Let me make an attempt to document it. So, and that's sort of where I I started from the need to document this culture of translating film that influenced so much of the Luganda street slang when I was growing up. Even to this day, if you're meeting with people who watch translated films, there's a way they speak that that resonates more to the VJs. So the project is to spotlight the influence and of VJs on culture in Uganda. And then they also have distinct styles of speaking. Like when Jingo is speaking, he can be quite loud and very energetic, and he's quite popular with action films. While if you look at Vijay Jr., he's quite somber and relaxed and seduces more of, in his way of speech. So I wanted to also look at this way of narrating as art styles, like a signature, and also maybe for prominent VJs that I grew up with. And during the process of the program with ICI, I did not get maybe the traditional way of doing the program. So I went to Ghana and was in a residency there at Black Star Lines, and they were teaching about decolonization, how art came to be, and the history of art. And a lot of information was coming at me, and I was like, wow, okay, I hadn't considered any of this. You know, I hadn't considered how movies had played quite a large role in colonization, and how it could also extend to this action of translating films. So I sort of had a moment, an aha moment of how about if movies were the first lessons I had on geopolitics, on love, on power, on anything really. Because when I was thinking about like the movies I used to watch, then sort of started to categorize them into like Chiyindi, Chikomando, and Chichina, and these were quite popular when I was growing up, and they taught me a lot about how the superiority of America in their movies, and the pride of Chinese martial arts and the pride in the culture. And then for action love story, sort of like films tatafa, like these lessons of the person, the main star always gets the girl, and things like this. And this informed also how I look at love, how I look at power, and my position in the world, even my country's position in the world. Maybe it was also like a subconscious lesson. And now during the time in Ghana, I woke up to this. And yeah, next slide. And just to give a brief history of film and colonialism, is how film came to Africa. It came as a tool to teach us the Western ways. And I don't know, could you please move to the next slide? Okay, thank you. So the first film was and this is a research I was doing before we in transit. It was an exhibition under a project funded by British Council, requesting people to react to their film moving image collection. And while I was assisting on that, one of the things I had to do was sort of research on film. How did film come to Uganda? And reading about it, and discovering all these papers, and trying to create sort of a single point where I can refer to. I discovered so many interesting facts, like first movie in Ghana, and we had East Africa. So film in Ghana, yeah.
May I cut you short? Your time is soon running out, so please summarize in 3 minutes.
Okay. So then, sort of give me the point of starting. Then one of the other things I can note quite clearly from here is for for movies to come to Africa, there needed to be a translator. And this could have been someone who speaks English and narrates to the local public. Or this could have been maybe like someone coming up with a story on a silent film. So that sort of also gives this basis to where narrating films came from. It was there since movies came to Africa. And then here's some images of how the culture of Echibanda, which is where most of the films come from, like most of the translated films. The difference between Echibanda and the way the colonizer used to show movies is quite slim. The only difference is that the narrator has autonomy of what to say, while in the other side, the colonizers told him what to say. So here it's sort of like a classroom also. So I'm right now I'm looking at film as a first lesson, and VJs as first teachers. And yeah, so I can't go through the whole presentation, sadly. But it goes on to sort of also maybe if you go to the next one, the next slide, please. Okay, so for the next slide, no, the previous one, yes. So sort of this, what I'm looking at right now, I have done is categorize things like the practice and then the films, the teachers and the lessons, right? And I look at, propaganda and imperialism in media, American war films on Vietnam, which were quite popular in 2000s and until 2010. And then you look at action movies where the, like American Sniper, which was produced in 2014, but it's still pushing this American war machine mentality, how they are superior. And then other movies like Pan-African post-colonialist movements and culture medias. So then you look at films like African Heritage, Sarafina, Once Upon a Time in China, Shaolin Temple, and I'm sort of like looking at these films that were made between 1980s to early 2014, 15 to 20. So in that time period, that is when a lot of media was used for propaganda, I think. Now, because of everyone having access to information, it's sort of different. Yeah, and one of the questions I'm asking is, who is or was the student? I mean, who receives this? No, the first one is, yes. Okay, so the first one is, who is the teacher? And, is it the filmmakers? Is it the translators? Is it the characters? Is it the community? Are we the ones internalizing these things so we are teaching ourselves? Or is it that we are the students, or are the VJs the students? And then what is the lesson also? Like, what lesson are we learning? And then I would again refer to like Asian films focusing more on the pride in culture, and African films sort of talking to this, celebration. And the next slide, you can see some of the films that I've mentioned. And then for American films, like what are the lessons of these films, right? Like American films like Commando, where someone goes and comes out alive, and he's like this one-man army. And then also I want to examine who wrote the lessons, and how did they decide what to teach, what the movie should be about, how did they go through that? And then, was the lesson learned? That is also like another thing that I want to see, just checking with maybe people who went, like millennials and Gen Zs, to see if the lesson was learned, or are we unlearning this? And if the lesson was learned, and how can we unlearn it? And yeah. Yeah, so I think the next slide is just like a beautiful. I found it quite interesting just to point out that the first 4 films you see are about, America's right to be in the Middle East. And then the middle films are sort of like, no, you don't have to be there. And these were directed by Americans, which I find quite funny. And also the actors acting in the films about the right to be in the Middle East, they're the same actors acting in the films that sort of criticize this occupation and why they were there. Then on the far left is, they're both movies made by Middle Easterns and also Americans reacting to the occupation of the Middle America's involvement in the Middle East. Yeah. And
Maria, I'm sorry, but I have to cut you. You've more than 7 minutes into time, so I have to actually call the next speaker. Otherwise, we are behind schedule.
okay.
You wanted to say like the last, sentence or last sentences, not like just
No,
end.
it's I can't just
I gave you 3 minutes and then you took 7, and everyone has 10 minutes.
so for the last, I think I was concluding with the questions that I'm asking and sort of demonstrating how film have been used. At least these are the small examples I can talk about right now. But for the whole practice, I want to go back and look at the films and the VJ's roles in pushing these agendas that the movies were constructed for. So right now, that is where I'm at, just examining the video jockey's role in pushing these, in extending these agendas and seeing if the agendas actually took root in Uganda, with focus on Uganda for now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maria. Yeah, I know everyone is like, I should let you speak, but one of the lessons also to be able to use your 10 minutes well. It's like an elevator pitch. So the next speakers, please use your time properly. Nelly, with the slides, please make sure you're in rhythm, because if you don't keep them moving, the speaker thinks they have time. So please just let everyone be in sync so that we don't eat extra time.
All right.
What's the agenda? Should we have a break? At what point is the break?
It's after Wairimu.
Okay, so I should. Yeah, thank you so much, Maria, for that presentation. The audience seems already geared up, so people are interested to ask questions. Yeah, I'm just going to call the next speaker. Wairimu, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
All right, so I'm just going to read Wairimu's short bio as Nelly, you please prepare the PowerPoint presentation. Please, you have 10 minutes to speak. Please, let's keep the time. So Wairimu Nduba is a Kenyan multidisciplinary creative whose practice is rooted and guided by African sonic principles, which hold music to be a site of communal gathering, healing, joy, and beauty. Her work sits at the intersections of sonic, visual archiving, and curation. She's the founder of Where Kenya, a digital archival platform that celebrates Kenya's nuanced and layered music history and seeks to make accessible the dynamic social and political interactions that we held within music histories across time and imperial bound borderlines. Ndumba's 18-year background in the field of ballet, first as a dancer and then as a tutor, also explores the ways in which the body exists as an archive, specifically expressed within the realm of African practices that held and carried forward knowledge through embodied movement and expression. Please welcome Wairimu.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here to share in space and in conversation with us. I think for me personally, I've been surprised at how quickly these 6 months have flown by. But I think it's also been such a treasure to be a part of this mentorship program, and I'm really grateful. And so, as has been spoken, I am really interested between the relationship between like sound and music and exhibition making and curating. And I think for me, this mentorship program and the conversations we had were a really good space for me to like rigorously think what the implications of this relationship looks like. And I think overall, as you see, the title of my project was is Where Are Those Songs? And it's looking at African women's sonic practices as a pathway towards crafting a curatorial methodology. I think for me, I was really interested in how sound and listening figure in the evolution of curatorial and exhibition making. And also thinking about how are women articulating their lives within sound, but also how are they articulating their lives within art making, and what is the relationship, what emerges from the findings of those two questions. So to give a bit of a background as to why the title Where Are Those Songs? Where Are Those Songs is taken from a poem by the Queen of My Heart, Nchere Gedai Mogo, who is a poet, who was a poet, who was an intellectual. And this is a snippet of a poem, also called Where Are Those Songs? And so I will read. Where those songs my mother and yours always sang, fitting rhythms to the whole vast span of life. What are the songs they sang? Harvesting maize, threshing millet, storing the grain, bathing us, rocking us to sleep at the ceremonies, childbirth, child naming, second birth, and initiation. And I think for me, having had some practice working with sound, I think for me it's always been such a testament to its power, the fact that it brings people together. I think the beauty of music is also in a way that transcends borders, and it really steps into the space of creating fitting rhythms to the whole vast span of life. I think because I do not come from a art background, in terms of like fine art background, I think my hesitancy when I was stepping into this space was really thinking if I belonged in this space, because I think my notions of the art space before I entered into the world of art making, exhibition practice, etc., was that you had to look a certain way, speak a certain way. And I think for me, I'm really interested in the way music can disrupt that kind of perspective of what it means to think about art, who has access to arts, who has access to being in these kinds of spaces. And I'm really interested in how music can, and the sonic can provide a way to, yeah, disrupt that kind of notion. So if you could go back to the next slide, kindly, so that I can touch a bit on Veggie Kenya. I would say my first curatorial practice came in the form of curating this digital archive of Kenyan music histories called Vajra Kenya. And I think for me, the impetus of this work and one of the gifts that it brought me was really understanding the ways in which music transcends borders. I mean, it's impossible to talk about Kenyan music history without talking about the ways in which Congolese music has influenced Kenyan musical practices. And so I think for me, it was really a lesson to expand my notion of what it means to talk about the sonic, what it means to think about the sonic. It was also really, I think, within also the practice of Veggie Kenya. I was also then studying what it means to pass on musical knowledge. And I came across a quote by a Ugandan scholar called James Isabere, who talks about when you're looking at music, you're not just looking at the music, you're also looking at what is happening around the music. And I think for me, this concept of thinking from a place of pluralities is also what has influenced kind of what is now becoming my curatorial methodology. You can go to the next slide. Hi, I think, yeah, the next slide, please. I think also when I was looking at the archives, the Kenyan music archives, I did notice a gap in terms of the women who are represented within the archive. I noticed that when I would be listening to certain songs, I would be hearing women sing, but when it came to like the visual imagery of who they were, what they looked like when they were performing, even just like things about where they were born, where they worked, it was very hard to come across that information. And so I think from that lack of information then came Where These Songs. And I think for me, one of the aspects of Where the Songs is that it's rooted in a citational practice. And here, as this quote from the School of Poetic Computation states, it's citation not because we believe in the ownership of ideas, but citation as a form of storytelling and lineage. I think for me, I did not arrive into this place by my own. I come carried on by a legacy of ancestors who fought, but also who lived in a lot of beauty for me to be able to take up space in the here and the now. I think for me, this notion of also inviting a citational practice is kind of disrupting the linearity of colonial knowledge systems, which kind of pride themselves in thinking about the past, the present, and the future in a separate. And I think inviting this citational practice and inviting this kind of notion of that the past is felt in the present and is felt in the future is also something that is really important. I think also important to Where Are Those Songs is opacity. And thinking about what it means to respect the limits of what cannot be known, as has been said by Saidiya Hartman, but also thinking that that people do hold the right to claim their own obscure remains. And even as Nombuso Matibela has stated, how to make sense of the real and lived experience of invisibility of women, of the invisibility that women have experienced, and without this meaning that we are succumbing to their negation or further unseeing them. I think for me, one of the gifts that this work has given me is understanding to reading silence within the archive, where there's silence that is forced, but there's also silence that is chosen. So how do we respect silence that is chosen? And in many ways, how do we respect the limits of what cannot be known? So we can go to the next slide. And so as a culmination of my thinking through what inviting African women's sonic practices to look like within the curatorial, the culmination of my work, and it will also continue, is a publication that I'm really excited to begin working on. I believe that writing is a really important way I think for me, is a really important way to navigate like research. I think it also is really important to help one articulate their thoughts. And I think these are one of the two questions that I'm thinking through as I work towards this publication. The first question being is, if the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house, how might attending to these sonic histories invite us to disrupt hegemonic narratives found within curatorial practice? So really thinking through the language that also surrounds this disruption. I think I'm really bolstered on, even in this notion of disruption, by the quote by Osman Sembene, in which he says, "Europe is not my center. I myself am the sun." And so what does it mean to invite this notion of I myself being the sun, or like we as women who are working within the sonic to be the sun? And how can we then invite a language that that helps us shape what being the sun is? I think for me, it was also really important to think about how can the practice of articulating thought alongside and through sound enable us to rigorously engage with art practice, art writing, and exhibition making. And I am really excited. I think this is also very much a work of experimentation, a work of play. And I think for me, I'm really excited to see what will come from this publication. I hope to begin filling it out and start writing it come July. And so, yeah, I think I leave you with two sound offerings that kind of mark where I'm at within the project right now. What it's looked like is, again, a lot of research, a lot of writing, but also a lot of deep listening. And so I have then shared with you two sound offerings that form, a deep listening to also hope that it would soothe. We're also living in crazy times. And so I think for me, it was also my hope that these sound offerings would also tide you over in these crazy times. But yeah, and there, I think I am done.
Perfect. So I'm going to introduce Nicole Remus, who is our next speaker, and then she will take over for 10 minutes. So Nicole Remus is an interdisciplinary creative practitioner, self-taught visual artist, curator, scenographer, graduate architect, and poet from Jinja, Uganda. Nicole has co-curated over 20 online and physical exhibitions as part of 401, The Creative Tribe, Ginger. She has also worked on the scenography for 3 significant exhibitions in Kampala, Sungi Mleya's debut solo, Just Disruptions, Portals, the first immersive generative art exhibition in Uganda featuring Scarlet Motif, and Send Me by Borderlands Art. Her curatorial approach, focuses on centering the artist, working closely with them to ensure their intentions are effectively communicated to the audience. With a background in architecture, Nicole delves into conceptual and spatial design, creating cohesive and sensory expression experiences. She's passionate about collaborating with emerging and experimental artists, as well as the innovative creators who bring exhibitions to life. Please, let's hear from Nicole.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here to the culmination of our program. It's been a really interesting few months, and I want to shout out my mentor, Portia, who has been really amazing. And yeah, so as you can, I think we can move to the next slide. So as you heard from my background, a lot of my practice has been influenced by my architectural background. So I focused a lot on the physical aspects of a show, of what the show actually looks like. And I've never actually had a process where I curated a show from beginning to end, and basically came up with a curatorial framework and birthed the idea from start to finish. So that's what this process has been about with for the past few months for me. So the project I've been working on is titled Ink and Kin. Let me go to the next slide, please. So Ink and Kin is actually started out as an exploration of like this curiosity I had about Erina and Maria's tattoo. So Maria actually presented earlier on the VJ project, and her and her twin sister are both artists and, well, creatives, because they do almost everything in Kampala, and they're also into the tattoo scene, and they are both tattoo artists as well, and they've tattooed each other. So I had like a fascination with this kind of concept, and I didn't really know why when the program started. And a lot of this mentorship has been about trying to figure out how to, like, what the curatorial output from this inspiration would be, and how would I contextualize that, and how would I get there. So while looking for a way to contextualize the tattoos and like this really intimate bond between the two sisters, I stumbled upon this text by Bonaventure, and the other names, who was writing about corporal literacy. So the text is called Corporal Literacy, the Body as Slate Sponge and Witness. So yes, the thing is, we're grounding this as a language, tattoos as a language of corporal literacy, and it will reflect on how tattoos embody memory and meaning across time. And the grounding of the project is in the relationship between the two sisters. So while a lot of the bulk of this work has been a lot of research and reading about tattoos and other body markings and how they fit into our historical and cultural context now, and trying to figure out which direction in which to take this offering. And could I go back, please? Yeah, so my framework is based around the text I was talking about earlier, which is corporal literacy. And as the second text is based on His Ways of Seeing by Berger, which is also a collection of essays. And then the prevalent thoughts are tattoo as a dialect, tattoos as memories, and using this twinship or sisterhood as the lens through which we look at this show, this offering. I don't even want to call it a show at the moment. So yeah, that's what I'll be presenting about for this session. Next slide, please. So Bonaventure actually sees corporal literacy. Well, when he was writing about it, he was writing about dancers, actually. But I found it really interesting that there was only this single quote in the whole essay that was referring to tattoos, but that's what the thing I read that actually grounded all my thoughts. And he was talking about how the body is actually a site of knowledge. So it's not just like a thing that we inhabit and we are the mind, but the body also carries memory and carries meaning, and it expresses that in different ways. So through things like gestures, postures, scars, and even the tattoos themselves, that is like the body's language. But in the quote that I read that kind of separated the two, I'm going to read the last part of the text. It says, every exercise of the muscles and the cells make up the body, that make up the body is possibly remembered, but every intervention in the body, scarifications, tattoos, scars, or injuries triggers the process of memory. So for me, this kind of reframed how I was thinking about tattoos, because in this way, they kind of function as a specific dialect in the whole language of the body. So it's not just that they are things that we do, but they're things that we are intentionally authoring, and they are things that we put on our bodies specifically as a trigger, or if are not intended that way, that is what they become. Next slide, please. So when I was thinking about tattoos as dialects, I was thinking about the other marks that we carry on our bodies, like scars. Those are like things that happen to us, or like, well, with the exception of some scars, but they happen to us and they're not really voluntary. But tattoos are like a conscious authorship, right? So you choose a design, you have your grounding thought about why you want this design, and then you put it on your body and you see it every day and other people see it. And depending on why you've chosen it or that time in your life you've gotten in it, it will carry a different meaning for you and it will carry a different meaning for the viewer. So as a dialect, just like the way, let me say if you're talking to somebody from a different part of Busoga, they have like different language. They have like different words that you might not know, or nuances or sayings, and you might not understand what they're saying, but it is specific to their cultural context. And sometimes it's even specific to them as an individual. So the visual language of tattoos also is like very specific and deeply individual, but can also be very shared because it's between the artist and the person who's getting the tattoo. And in this case, sometimes that is the same person, right? Yeah, next slide, please. So when I was thinking about tattoos as memories, here I actually decided to just put up photos of my notebook because I was having a lot of thoughts, and it was kind of like all of them were too large of questions to answer. And I was thinking about what is the threshold between memory and meaning. Because if we get tattoos as they carry that memory in time, but also they carry a meaning with them that changes over time, right? And even if you got a tattoo and you didn't really have any meaning behind it, there was a reason why you got it then. And there was like circumstances surrounding it, and you carry those memories. So then I ask the question, does the body remember without the mind? So if the body, like for example, how you sit, your posture, is your body remembering something, how you walk? So is it the same way with tattoos? Is having this inscription on you something that you remember without actively remembering it? And what is the ritual returning to these meanings? How do we relearn what we needed to remember? So there's like a lot of questions around here. But also when I was thinking more about seeing, I was thinking of seeing as a corpus literate act itself, not just, can we go back please, just briefly? So if seeing itself is a corpus literate act where you are actively seeing something and you're paying attention to how you're seeing, then that is also like seeing itself is something to investigate, because tattoos are a visual language, and it's a visual language that is visible to everyone around you, despite how specific the message might be to you. So this led me to think more about seeing, and that grounded us to the next text, which is ways of seeing. So
Nico,
actually, yeah.
sorry, your 10 minutes are used up. Please summarize.
I think I have a minute
Last
left.
one.
I'll be done.
Last one.
I'll be done. Yeah. So this led me to thinking about ways of seeing and how seeing is never neutral, because whatever you see has been shaped by a frame, has been shaped by a power, has been shaped by a context. So this part of the framework for me is influencing how this curatorial offering would come together. And it's not really about what, because for a while I was stuck in what is the show, what are we showing? Is it photographs? Is it this? Is it this? And I couldn't figure it out. And I realized it was because I was trying to do this in almost like a way where the people who I wanted to make the show with were outside the thought process. And reading Ways of Seeing again helped me realize that this is not just like a presentation about the sisters, but it's a shared offering within them. And I'm very happy that they were able to, sorry, I'm so out of breath. Anyway, yeah, and I was happy that they were willing to have a collaborative process. So by Ways of Seeing, it's like we're framing how the artwork is seen, because it's not just like this. It's not even about like the tattoo itself, but it's about the relationship between the sisters and their bodies and their agency over that, and what they choose to show and how they choose to show it would be a major driving way to make sure that it's not an extractive practice. Yeah. So next. So yeah, so these are also some notes from a conversation we had with the two sisters that really, like, for me, brought it home that their relationship was not just like a thing that was a theme, but it was foundational to this experience. And it was one of the quotes they said is like, this relationship has held us together, and it in itself is a tapestry of art experiences. And then another thing they said when I was asking them about about how they got into tattooing and tattooing each other, I think Arina said that here is me trusting you that you'll listen to me. And that's while handing over a gun to your sister to mark your body forever. So I want to show this, like these little intangible things within the show, and figuring out what that curatorial output would be. I think it's very necessary to work collaboratively with the sisters. And on that, that's my last slide, please. Yes. Want to ground this presentation in saying that I was working out with, I wanted to create a framework in which to think. And this is what has taken me all this time, just figuring out how to think about what the offering would be. And it has led me back to that space of where these tattoos simply aren't images, but they're a dialogue between two people. And we need to honor that intimacy and bring the sisters into the process and make sure that their voices and their experiences are felt and understood in a way that they want them to be shared. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. That was brilliant. And very, very inspiring. I mean, sisterhood, family, friendship, body art. There's a lot there to say. And I think that was very articulate. Thank you so much for bringing it home. Yeah, the next speaker, like I said earlier on, if you're just joining us, please remember to keep your questions. They'll be asked at the end of the session. We shall have 20 minutes dedicated to just questions and answer. Please keep them to you, and then you shall ask them when the time comes. I hereby invite the next speaker. That should be Sarah Waiswa. Sarah, are you present?
I'm here.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to read Sarah Weisswa's short bio, and then she will also speak to us for the next 10 minutes. So Sarah Weisswa is a Ugandan-born, Kenyan-based, award-winning documentary and portrait photographer with an interest in exploring the new African identity on the continent. With degrees in sociology and psychology, Sarah worked in a corporate position for a number of years, but decided to pursue photography full-time. Sarah's work explores social issues in Africa in a contemporary and non-traditional way. Her work has been exhibited around the world, and most recently in the Africa Fashion Exhibition at the Brooklyn Museum. Her photographs have been published in the Washington Post, Bloomberg, and the New York Times, among other publications, and she has worked with brands such as Christian Dior, Chloe, and in 2021, she founded African Women in Photography, a nonprofit organization dedicated to elevating and celebrating the work of women and non-binary photographers from Africa. In 2023, her passion for curatorial work led her to curate her first exhibition, Sisi ni Hayo, at the Goethe Institute in Nairobi, funded by the Ford Foundation. The exhibition celebrated the unique perspectives of 12 East African women photographers on womanhood. Please welcome Sarah Weisswa.
Thank you, Martha, and thank you everyone else for being here. I really have to first kind of just thank Martha and Njabala for putting this mentorship together and for the opportunity to mentor, to have such an amazing mentor, Fadzai, and to be able to meet the other mentors and mentees in Uganda at Obulobwafe. I think coming from the background of a self-taught photographer and then also aspiring curator, I think education kind of becomes one of those things where you learn as you go and things kind of come up based on need. And we spoke about this, I think, at our retreat in Uganda. And so I think this program has really been instrumental in terms of just the exchange of knowledge, but also in thinking about ideas and how to develop those ideas and to kind of put things together. So I will, as a photographer, and kind of looking at the history of photography in Africa, I think East Africa has long been left out of that conversation. There's often kind of discussions around, West African photographers, so the Malik Sidibes, the Samuel Fossos, or even in South Africa, David Gobolt, and so on and so forth. And so I've thought about that for a long time, even as I began working with images and in photography. And so over time, and even after I formed African Women in Photography, obviously my interest is always in women and how they see, and also having the ability to share their stories and be able to do that. So I think the project that I'm working on emerged from a gap that I noticed, especially after. Oh, can you go back to the first? Yeah. So so the project emerged from a gap I noticed after reading Ethel Ruth Tao's paper, "Where Are the Women Image Makers in African History?" And then I followed that reading up with the book Women in Photography. And whereas Ethel kind of focused more on pioneers such as Felicia Ban or Safi Fai, Ruth Motau, all from kind of West and Southern Africa. Women in Photography kind of focused mainly on contemporary photographers from West and Southern Africa. And so it kind of led me to, ask my own question is, where are the women image makers from East Africa? And so part of this question is what I have been trying to develop a research project around, and is what Fadzai has kind of been helping me work through. So I think you can go to the next slide. So these are the two points of research, I guess, where this project began. So I think one of the things that me and Fadzai initially talked through was because I think in the beginning I was just thinking about East Africa as a whole, and so we were able to kind of think about, okay, that the scope might be too large, and so my question then kind of narrowed down to image makers in Kenyan history. One question kind of that emerged even in at our retreat or with Fazai and some of the people that I've talked to has been, well, what if you don't find anything? What if absence is the story? And so I had to start to think about this and kind of learn to frame that absence also as a powerful finding, because obviously an archive of Eurasia says just as much about the systemic exclusion, sorry, and invisibility. You can go to the next slide. So in thinking about this research project, I kind of had to refine or clarify my objectives. So with some discussions with Fadzai, I kind of refined my scope into three kind of key objectives. So the research and documentation phase, which is what I've been doing essentially, and thinking about building a structured or searchable kind of annotated database of what I find. And then I'm very much interested in visibility and public programming. So Martha, yeah, so I'm, in terms of visibility and public programming, is like sharing the work through maybe curated exhibitions or publications. And then something important for me, obviously, even as I work with African women in photography, is sustainability and knowledge transfer. So integrating whatever findings into some sort of like workshops or mentorships, and eventually, hopefully, a digital archive that would be accessible. I think another thing that kind of came out of our conversations was, the importance of defining the success of this project. So not only just by discovery in terms of like the number of photographers that I, was able to kind of document, but also looking at what would the audience engagement look like, if there was a digital archive, looking at the traffic there, but also what types of kind of conversations would come out of the findings across different art space or academia. You can go to the next slide. Hello? Can you please move to the next slide? Okay, I'll just keep going. So in terms of methodology,
Nelly,
part of
you
my
there?
focus. Yeah, so in terms of methodology, I'm focusing on formal archives. So, whether that's like the Kenya National Archive, the Macmillan Memorial Library, even the the standard or the newspapers, and looking at newspaper archives as well. But I'm most excited probably about more the informal sources like family albums, studio archives, and oral histories. Of course, one of the challenges about studio archives is a lot of the studios kind of destroyed a lot of the images, but I'm interested kind of in the conversations around, women's involvement even in the studios, and getting to document that as well. So just general budget stuff obviously is movement, archival access and digitization, which obviously is I'm quite worried about because I've worked with the archives before, and just kind of accessing the information and getting to use that was quite challenging. But yeah, and then equipment and transcription costs, and then obviously a small team if possible to help with the data collection and cataloging. And so, in as much as oh, just to add on also, I think an important conversation that I had with Fadzaya was um, she said something about paying attention to how other exhibitions are funded in terms of even when looking for funding. I think I as many exhibitions that I've been to, I've never really like paid attention to how the exhibition was funded per se, but I think she recommended that this was really a good source in terms of seeing who is out there funding these shows or who has an interest in the arts. So anyway, as part of my research as well, of course, I've been doing case studies in terms of the more contemporary Kenyan photographers. And so far, my research has lighted photographers like Mimi Cheronongok, whose visual poetic language kind of reflects a deeply personal feminist practice. She was born in Nairobi in 1983 and studied at the University of Cape Town. And her work centers around issues of home, displacement, loss, and identity. I've also been looking at the work of Barbara Minishi, who has been known for her subversive surreal portraiture that critiques beauty and fashion standards. I mean, she does a lot of things, but her themes are often driven by cyclical mythic journeys of self, nature, alchemy, and arcana, and intuitive embodied expression of visual arts. So these are just kind of some of the more contemporary photographers from Kenya that I've been looking at. But I think what I like so far is that, even in these two examples, the women represent kind of different approaches. So experimental, documentary, and commercial. And I think this kind of helps to map a more nuanced kind of genealogy of practice. Yeah, and so kind of as I wrap this up, so what do I envision in terms of what the where this project kind of will end? Of course, the ultimate is probably an evolving digital archive that's open to the public and accessible. I think a book publication, I think, with essays and image portfolios and interviews, I think would just is important. Of course, for the work to travel and to be seen across East Africa, I think is really important for me. And also, again, back to this idea of kind of being integrated into school or library or art institution programs, so that yeah, there's more inclusion of these women in the history. Yeah, so I think. So I'll kind of end. Oh, you can go to the last slide. So I think, even absence is a finding is not really just saying that I won't find anything, but it's kind of, whether I uncover a rich network of women photographers or confront, I don't know, some sort of depth of erasure. I think that this project is ultimately about reclaiming the right to be seen and to be remembered. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Could we then invite the last but not the least speaker? Nelly, could you please share the PowerPoint for the last speaker? Nafkot, are you present?
Hi, yes, I am here.
All right. Okay, so as Nelly figures out your presentation, I'm going to quickly read your bio as we head in the last 10 minutes of this symposium before we welcome the Q&A. Yeah, thank you so much. Our audience has been stable throughout, and this means that what is being talked about is actually, interesting and people want to know. So thank you so much for being patient with us and staying with us all this way to the last speaker. So Navkot Gebeyehu is a documentary photographer and journalist with a passion for storytelling. Through her lens, she seeks to uncover untold stories and share them with the world. One of her notable projects is Vintage Addis Ababa, a photo book exploring the everyday lives of Addis Ababa residents from the 40s to the 80s. Nafkot's work can be found on her Instagram account, Fuablish. Beyond her photography, Nafkot is the co-founder of Studio 11, an art gallery dedicated to nurturing emerging artists in Addis Ababa. With a focus on interactive and creative curation, Studio 11 offers a unique space for artists to showcase their works and connect with the local audience. The gallery also provides educational programs and workshops to support the growth of young talent. All right, please welcome Nafkot.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for staying. I will quickly go through the slides. I'm the last presenter. We can go to the next slide. So I've been introduced very well. I'm a curator, I'm a photographer, and I'm a storyteller. Most of my practice is formed by who I am or what I was trained in, which is journalism. So I did not really set out to be a curator. When we co-founded Studio 11, our art gallery, about 4 years ago, I had no idea what curatorship or like how to curate exhibitions. We just thought artwork just found itself in galleries. But then through the process of working with different artists, I found myself becoming the person who's writing the exhibition text, coming with the curatorial statements and all these things. So, and a major reason why I joined this mentorship program is because I wanted to learn more about what being a curator actually entails. We can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. So
Nelly, are you there? Could you please go to the next slide? Sorry, Nafkot.
no worries.
Which
yes, so when I joined the workshop, I really did not have a lot of understanding about, like I mentioned, what curatorial practices were, and I was really approaching it from a very curious point of view and trying to understand how these spaces worked.
May I request everyone to mute themselves, please?
I think we're moving. Okay, I think this is the next slide. So this, a little about Studio 11, it's co-founded with my co-founder, her name is Zion, she's a painter, I'm a photographer. It started becoming operational in 2021, and we aim to become an artist residency space, especially for women. And so far, we've hosted a little over 30 exhibitions. We don't have external funding yet, but we're working with an Austrian coffee brand called Afro Coffee. If you're ever in Addis, it's 5 minutes from the airport, so you can visit us. We can go to the next slide. So what we wanted to do with the residency, and the reason I joined this program, is we wanted to have, I'm not sure if this is the next slide, Nelly. I think I'm just gonna, oh.
Nafkot, which slide should I go on? This one?
It's okay. I think slide number 5. You're on 10. Oh, like number 5, yes.
Yeah, this is
No,
number 5.
that's 7. 2 slides back. One, number 4.
I'm on slide number 5.
Could you please go to number 4, please?
Okay.
Thank
Number
you.
4 there.
Okay, I'll present. Is it okay if I look through my slides instead? I don't think it's synced. So I wanted to talk briefly about my
So
mentor.
this is
Yes, that was the slide I wanted to
there.
be on. Thank you. So through the program, I was paired with Batanga, who is the founder of Modzi Arts in Lusaka. Yes, thank you. And we've spent 6 months working closely on our project that we're trying to launch from Studio 11. She taught me many things that I didn't know. She runs an exhibition space, also an artist residency space, and she's building a museum for Zamrock, which is all cool things. So I got to meet a mentor, but also she was collaborating with me on this idea of having a space for artists that teaches them how to have sustainable careers in the arts. Because in my country, there's a lot of unemployment issues and a lot of young people are interested in the art scene. And we do have a thriving education when it comes to arts. It's given at the university level and many talented young people go there, graduate, but they don't really have information after they graduate. And although they're incredibly talented artists, they don't really know how to sell their work, how to market their work, how to speak about their work. And because there's also a language barrier, we predominantly speak in Amharic, and the international art scene space is set up, not with that language. So people shy away from really reaching out for opportunities that make them go global. So we wanted to fill in that space and train people in these soft skills around art and trying to build an artist residency in business. So that's what my project is. We can go to the next slide. So that was the concept that I was working on. And because my mentor has extensive experience in these spaces, she understands the struggle, she understands how the funding space operates, which I had no idea about. Prior to this, I haven't applied for bigger institutional fundings. So my struggle was understanding how to budget for things, how to explain the programming, how to understand how things should be presented to funders and grants. So we wanted to also talk about like the infrastructure around artists, because we have so many artists in Ethiopia, but the infrastructure around them, like curators and managers and people that can actually enhance the experience of the artist, is lacking. So we wanted to also work on that. So when we met in Uganda at the midpoint, that changed everything for me, because I got to meet not only my mentor, but also different mentors from across Africa that are doing incredible things in their regions. And thank you, Martha, and the Bulobafe Festival, and all the people that I've met there. It's incredible because it gave me a sense of direction. And it not only gave me a direction in what to do in Ethiopia and not just East Africa, but also where the art landscape is in Africa, and also what we can do in a global landscape. So that really helped me understand our career, or what to look forward to in my career. So we're building the first art business residency program. It's supposed to be a 6-week residency program to teach emerging artists what they don't often get in art school, which means how to build their portfolio, how to price their work, how to write their bios, apply for grants, speak about their artwork, all these different things. Like I mentioned earlier, the talent is visible, but the infrastructure is missing. So I'm just going to recap what I've learned throughout those 6 months. The first thing I learned is that mentorship is not a bonus, especially for curators who are self-taught. It's very foundational to have mentors, and that's why this program is really important. And I've also decided to go to school after our midpoint, because the recurring conversation is that their education is really instrumental in having conversations in the global space and having access to different things in the art scene. So I learned a lot about funding basics and building relationship with funders. We got to visit a lot of spaces in Uganda, specifically 32 Degree West, which was a community-funded project that Teresa is doing incredible work with. So that also gave me a sense of direction. And I also learned how to de-Westify curation spaces, like how to take pride in our Indigenous culture and how to use that in my curatorial practice. Infrastructure is really what is missing in the East African art space mostly. And so how to build that. So how to be bridges and not gatekeepers. That was also a really big lesson for me. So in light of that, our residency program is designed to be 6 weeks, 20 artists per cycle, and the workshops will cover how to brand yourself on social media, how to build a website, how to develop your portfolio and your presentation, and also talk about financial literacy, sustainability models, and curating an exhibition, body of work, networking, all these things. And we want to link emerging artists with established local mentors. And with each cohort, they will get feedback on their work as well as be connected to local artists who have made it internationally. So currently we're working towards getting grants on this, and my mentor Bataonga has helped me with the programming language, with the funding structure and the budget, down to like sharing Excel sheets on how to structure the budget and how to ask for funding and who to go to for funding. So we've been doing extensive research on who's likely to fund programs like this. And we're also preparing a proposal for the Addis Ababa Mayor's Office to request a permanent land for a creative space, something like Kuona Arts Trust in Kenya, because we don't have that, especially with the recent demolition of our spaces. Artists are really pushed to the periphery. So we're requesting those things to be in the center of the city. And I'm also developing a local patron program to look for funding in a more sustainable, community-based ways. Yeah, so another, a more immediate thing that we're doing is next month, we're starting a monthly learning series at Studio 11. It's called Art School Addis Ababa, and it's to talk to people around the arts, not just the artists, but also the curators, the writers, the producers, the assistants, all these people that can help artists launch their careers. So how to build sustainable careers, curatorial programming 101, writing for the arts world, all these things will be discussed in a monthly series at the studio. So what I know now before what I knew before, just to recap, before this mentorship program, I did not understand how to run a residency, how to fundraise effectively for any residencies or any projects. I've only done one fundraising programming, which was crowdsourced on Kickstarter, and I'm understanding that the art space and also programming for such things is a bit more complicated than that. And I also have been submitting proposals and grants with no clear budget outlines or clear programming language. I also didn't see formal education as part of my future, but after the mentorship, I've understood that running an art gallery means thinking of it like an institution beyond just a space that shows art. And also key things like, you know, budgets, Excel sheets, clear values to pitch to sponsors, how to speak to collaborators, and all these things. So I'm thinking about partnering with people beyond what I thought would be. So my mode of thinking has also been changed. And this has been very instrumental for me. And I'm really, really thankful for Martha and all the mentors and mentees in this program. I look forward to continuing the work with you guys and linking up. So yeah, thank you so much for all that you've provided for us. That's a wrap. That's the end. Thank you.